All right, everybody. Mike Brown. Welcome back to the JEMS Product Podcast. Very excited to have a couple new friends of mine on today. We're going to talk about TRAUMAGEL, a new product out there from Cresilon that I'm really excited to dig a little deeper into. So, no further ado, please introduce yourselves, gentlemen, and let's get this chat going.
Yeah, of course. My name is Joe Landolina. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cresilon. I started the business about 15 years ago with the mission of saving lives. And so we make a product that is plant-based. It's a gel that controls bleeding in seconds, indicated for temporary external control of moderate to severe hemorrhage.
Excellent. And my name is Sean Allen. I'm the Director of Education for TRAUMAGEL. I spent 24 beautiful years as a flight medic and a crew chief. And I did want to break a pinky swear with my daughter that I would retire after 24 years. And if you have a daughter, you never break a pinky swear. So I do what everyone else does when you retire. You go teach. And I spent the last 7 beautiful years teaching. So it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I'm really excited to have both of you here, Joe from the inventor developer side, and then, also to be able to bring in the training side of it as well with Sean, because I think that's what really makes this a well-rounded experience. So Joe, if you could talk about TRAUMAGEL and kind of where it came from, how it came to be. I've done some research about you. You've got a really interesting story, and I'd like to hear some of that. I think some of the listeners would have fun with it as well.
Yeah, of course. So I had a very unusual childhood. So my grandfather was an ex-pharmaceutical executive who started a vineyard, and he had a winery lab in that vineyard. I grew up across the street, and every day after school, I would go into the lab and I'd work and play around with my grandfather. So I fell head over heels in love with chemistry from a really early age. That led to me at the age of 17 discovering this blend of materials from algae that would stick to my skin and wouldn't let go. And so I had a simple idea, because I wanted to go to medical school at the time. I was a chemical engineering student. And I thought, what if you could use this to at least plug up a bullet wound so you can transport a patient from point A to point B without the patient bleeding out? And that's not exactly what we do today with TRAUMAGEL, but those were the humble beginnings. And we entered that into a business plan competition at NYU, which is where I was a chemical engineering student. And we won. It gave us just enough capital to start prototyping and putting things together. And 15 years later, Cresilon is now a New York-based biotech company. We have around 100 employees that are based here in our offices in New York. We do all of our own manufacturing, and we're actually the only biomanufacturer in the 5 boroughs in New York, which is something that I'm very proud of. And we have an animal health product called VETAGEL, which is a broad indication surgical hemostatic device that's used in everything from trauma to soft tissue surgery to brain and spine surgery to dentistry and anything else you can imagine. And that product has been sold for about 6 years, and then is now available in 34 countries around the world. But what we're talking about today is TRAUMAGEL, which is based on the same chassis as VETAGEL, but it's a plant-based gel that controls moderate to severe hemorrhage in seconds. And so what it does is it looks like hummus in a syringe. You uncap the syringe, you apply it to any topical wound where you can see the source of bleeding, and it allows you to get control of the bleeding without needing to put your fingers in the wound, without needing to go through onerous wound packing techniques, and it drastically shortens the time that's required to treat a patient and to get them on to the next level of care.
That's amazing, because and this is an area, and I'm sure, Sean, you can kind of weigh in on this as well with your experience. Managing external hemorrhage that is not amenable to tourniquet placement has always been a little bit of a challenge for us, right? As you alluded to with this product, you don't have to put your fingers in the wound. We then don't have to pack that wound with either a standard gauze or a gauze impregnated with a hemostatic agent to try to form that clot. So I think there's really some significant value here. So Sean, I'd be interested to see or to hear what your thoughts are in your experience with the product from a training side and use standpoint.
Absolutely. Packing a wound is it's just not, it's a perishable skill, first of all, and most providers, pre-hospital providers, et cetera, it's hard to do. It's not something that we get a lot of practice at. It's hard. The patient is usually moving around, a lot of pain, and you're trying to get in there and really kind of wound pack and get, whatever particular, gauze or what have you down to the wound, close to the source of the bleed. It's just the challenge. Once again, your fingers are in there, they're moving around. And I think, something with trauma gel really does kind of raise that bar. It makes it more of a level playing field so we can do better at patient care. So if you're not necessarily great at that particular skill, trauma gel kind of makes up for those lacking, being able to get to the source of the bleed and create that barrier so you can stop the bleed. So it's really going to make a huge difference out in the field as far as the gap in between from wound packing to something that is a little bit more flowable, much more dynamic to get to the source.
Well, it's interesting that you say flowable, because when I received the product, you sent me a demo product in the mail to take a look at. I've got it here in front of me, and that's what I think I was most impressed with, and what seems to be truly unique about this product. So I do have a little bit of experience in managing compressible hemorrhage via wound packing, and there is a lot of movement that happens with that, both voluntary and involuntary, right? The patient's experiencing a lot of pain. They're going to withdraw to that. So it's difficult to truly pack all of that cavity and really be able to get all the pressure where you need it. So this seems to be a product that will allow us to grab control of that hemorrhage and start to work towards clot formation without a lot of the discomfort that would be associated with a standard wound packing. Couple that with the flexible nature of this product. So just by looking at it, so I pull it out of the package, it's in this syringe, and I just simply take a cap off and I can see the product in there. But the flexibility of it, I think, is something that's also remarkable when we talk about how this is going to work, right? Because now we find that person that we've got to manage that hemorrhage, and let's say we've packed it with gauze. Now we need to move them, and that gauze moves around. Now we're potentially starting to lose clots, things like that. This seems to be a different way of attacking that could take that potential failure point out. And just interested what you guys think.
Definitely. I mean, I think you've highlighted two major benefits of TRAUMAGEL. So the first is that in the surgical theater, there are flowable technologies or flowable hemostatic devices that have been used for decades at this point. But TRAUMAGEL is the first flowable that's been cleared for use in a traumatic scenario for moderate to severe external hemorrhage. And so that flowability allows you to adapt to the dynamic styles of wounds that you see in a trauma patient. And so it would be great if a wound was stable and the patient wasn't moving around, but that's not the world that we're in. And the second benefit is that when TRAUMAGEL goes into the wound, it doesn't have any pores or fibers that mix with the blood or absorb the blood. And that means that as the patient produces their own fiber, as they produce their own clot, when TRAUMAGEL moves or when the patient moves, you're not actually ripping the clot off with the gel. And so that makes it, on one hand, easier for removal when they get to definitive care. But on the other hand, as the patient is moving, it makes them less likely, or makes the patient less likely to experience rebleeding, because you're not flexing the clot along with the product.
That really comes into play too. For example, real world stuff. If someone's being cut out of an automobile or whatnot, and we may be wound packing in there, that was one of our problems in the pre-hospital environment. Was we would go to remove the patient to put them on a backboard or a scoop and then get them, and then sure enough, we would always stimulate a rebleed and have to go back and mess with it again after the first time, which takes time. So having TRAUMAGEL being flexible and dynamic and almost kind of moving with that wound really does kind of take away for that chance of a rebleed, spontaneous, messing with the clot, something you work so hard to kind of establish. And the other was time. You brought that up earlier, is that it takes time packing wounds. And this is something where, this literally takes seconds to go ahead and place TRAUMAGEL. So there's a lot of benefits there.
Yeah, I can see that for certain. So, just quickly, I wanted to circle back and touch on what it is approved in use for, what types of hemorrhage, and if there are any limitations to its use.
Sure. So Traumagel's indication is for temporary control of moderate to severe external hemorrhage. This is not indicated for surgical use. It's not intended to be used in the abdomen or in the chest, or in cases where you don't see the source of bleeding. So you don't want to blindly apply Traumagel into a place where it can end up in the abdomen, because, again, it's designed to be a temporary external product. So it can be left in place for up to 24 hours, but after that point, it must be removed at definitive care. But beyond that, if you can get Traumagel onto the wound, you're able to solve it. And so this is things like gunshot wounds, deep lacerations, stab wounds, crushing injuries, avulsions. These are all cases. Even things like scalp lacerations. The beauty of a product like Traumagel is that if you have a geriatric patient on blood thinners, Traumagel will work independent of the clotting cascade. And so we've seen some really impressive use case there, where instead of having a patient who's bleeding through gauze and needing multiple changes of 4x4s, you can now put Traumagel on, control that bleeding. It may not be the most life-threatening of bleeds, but at least now you can focus on doing other things while you're transporting that patient.
Awesome. Yeah, very, very versatile. So I think it's obvious I like it. So let's say Mike comes to you guys and says, "Hey, I want to know how can I institute this in my agency? What kind of training is there, and how can I adopt this?"
I'll let Sean jump in, because this is his area of expertise.
So as far as it's a mechanical device, and as far as being able to institute in protocols, it fits right into any any kind of hemorrhage protocol that your department has. And as far as training, it comes with the training. So when if you're going to purchase Traumagel, we will come out. We do a couple of different avenues of training. We can do train the trainers, lots of hands-on stuff as far as going through everything that we want to make sure that everyone feels very proficient prior to a launch. But not only that, I think the easiest part is that when we get there, when I want to give you an hour of class, and a lot of it is hands-on, but there's such a quick class that we'll get into all different types of hemorrhage and different types of scenarios that you can use it for. Whatever your department needs, we're pretty adaptable. We don't have one particular box and actually to fit into it. We're going to come and you tell us how we can help institute this department-wide to make it an effective use and get it on the rigs as quick as we can.
Oh, that's awesome. It seems like it would be pretty straightforward, really, from a training and implementation standpoint. And like I said, being able to get my hands on the product and see just how simple it is and how intuitive and easy it is to operate. It's easy to spin the cap off. The product comes out, deploys very easily. It's a fairly small size, so I'm holding it in my hand here. It's not going to be really cumbersome, take up a lot of space. So yeah, I'm a really big fan, and I did a little bit of research, and you've got some other really big fans out there. You've got some cases where Traumagel has been utilized in some agencies that are already seeing the benefits of it. Can you highlight any of those specifically that you'd like to talk about today?
Sure. So we're in the process of collecting case studies. It's always, especially in these early phases of launch, it's exciting to see the use cases where Traumagel has been used. And so one of the more interesting, at least for us as engineers and medics, is in-field tourniquet reduction. And so what we found is that the use of Traumagel in conjunction with the tourniquet, we've had several cases of this type. In fact, there was a recent case with a patient who severed or who cut his hand on a saw about halfway through the hand, severing his ulnar artery. A tourniquet was placed in field, but this was a rural case where the transport time was long to the nearest trauma center. And so they used Traumagel as an adjunct in that point, but attempted to reduce the tourniquet in field. and found that there was complete hemostasis. And so they were able to remove the tourniquet entirely and transport the patient, which likely contributed to saving that patient's hand. And so really interesting use cases that we only find out by having our medics and our EMS agencies, our hospitals using the product there. And Sean, I don't know if you have any other cases that you'd like to highlight.
I think just in general, I mean, we've had a few, GSWs, things like that, where maybe smaller entries, which would have been very difficult to try to get your fingers in there and pack a wound, where, with TRAUMAGEL and its opening, what's nice about that is being able to really press it against the skin even on a smaller opening, and having it being dynamic and a gel able to kind of get down to those spaces where it's difficult to kind of get your fingers down in there and use some whatever other hemostatic agents. So I think we've had a few of those that have really kind of shined in the past.
That's awesome. I mean, as more and more of it gets out there and we're able to see how well it functions, I'm really excited to see some more of those use cases come in without letting out any secrets or digging too deep into the clotting cascade. Can you explain how it works to help control that bleeding? I'm just curious.
Yeah, of course. So TRAUMAGEL has a two-part mechanism, right? So the first part is purely mechanical. What it does is it goes onto the wound, and the two polymers that make up TRAUMAGEL create a barrier against bleeding. And so think of it just as a really good adhesive. And so the beauty of the product is that it's flowable. It looks like hummus in a syringe, and so that hummus is just flowable enough that it'll get to the source of bleeding. But it's just rigid enough that it'll resist even arterial blood flow. And so it creates a mechanical barrier that physically stops bleeding. But then that's where the interesting part comes in. And I'm sure we've all seen this, right? You cut yourself shaving, you put toilet paper on it. And we know that standard clotting time is roughly 7 minutes. And so if we peel off the toilet paper after 30 seconds, there's a blood clot that's sitting on the toilet paper, but it's on the toilet paper and our face is still bleeding. And so with the case of TRAUMAGEL, there are no fibers or there are no pores for that clot to form around. So when fibrin forms, and when endogenous fibrin forms at the source of the bleed, it does not become incorporated within TRAUMAGEL. So TRAUMAGEL allows for a strong natural clot to be formed at the source of the wound. But as the patient moves, even if you remove the gel, you're more likely to keep that fibrin localized where it needs to be. And so it has that two-part mechanism. So it's not just about plugging up the hole, it's about letting the patient produce their own clot and keeping it there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, getting that clot is what we're always about, right? Because then that allows us to better resuscitate our patient and be able to have good outcomes. And I think with you'd alluded to the being able to bring down tourniquets, with the talk about tourniquet conversions being big right now. I think this is potentially something to look at. And you had mentioned the consistency of it. So I've got the syringe right here, and it is kind of like hummus. So push it out of there, and it is so it's like a gel, oddly enough. But I can see where that's going to kind of find its way into places that ordinary gauze wouldn't be able to. So thanks for sharing how that works. I was just curious from a medical standpoint. Now, the last question that I have is there a big difference in the way like animals clot and humans clot? So you started with the VETAGEL and now TRAUMAGEL is.
Sure. So there's a running joke that vets love, which is what do you call a veterinarian that only specializes in one species? A doctor. and so the long answer, or the short answer to this, is that the animals have different clotting systems. So there are many animals like pigs, like dogs, that have very similar clotting systems to humans. But the value with VETAGEL is that we have use case in more than 60,000 dogs, a significant amount of felines. We had examples in birds and exotics and whales and gorillas and chimpanzees and small lizards that I can't remember the name of. And so the beauty of that animal health market is that you get a similarity that gives you a direction. I mean, of course, the testing that we had to do was unique for TRAUMAGEL, meaning we couldn't fully leverage the animal health data set. But at the very least, with such a wide range of clinical use case in animal health, it gives us an understanding of where this technology can be used.
Well, and that's obviously it's good that you're able to test, not so much test, but utilize it in that population. You have a good product. Now you can continue to kind of reinforce what it's going to do and how it's going to be able to be utilized and further develop it then as you roll into the human market. So yeah, I'm just very excited to see more of it getting out there.
Definitely, yeah, we're very excited as we start to expand use of TRAUMAGEL.
Very much.
What do you think is next on the horizon for TRAUMAGEL? What's next?
So it's continuing getting out there. So our mission is saving lives, and so the thing that excites me most is getting access across the U.S. So in my mind, this is something that should be on every ambulance, that should be in every trauma center, and we're not quite there yet, but we'll get there. And then beyond that, our job doesn't stop with only one product. And so Cresilon's mission is to continue to develop new products and develop technologies that help the clinician to be able to render aid. And so we don't stop with just TRAUMAGEL, but at least for now, we have enough on our hands.
Well, for a kid that grew up in a winery, I'm excited to see what you've got coming next.
Thank you.
All right. So Joe and Sean, thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you enough how much it's meant that you've taken your time to sit down and tell us about this new product. And I'm just really excited to help support you in your mission to get this into more people's hands. So again, Mike Brown, JEMS Product Podcast. Thanks everybody for being here. Joe and Sean, have a great day.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.